Hi students, it's Arthur and welcome to our last module of the Career Essentials course on job offers. So this week, during this session I should say, we'll focus on hopefully what is a very wonderful phase of your job search journey, understanding and evaluating a job offer or job offers, hopefully, that we can create enough interest in you that you get multiple offers. And this module is going to equip you with the knowledge and skills needed to make informed decisions about job opportunities. In this particular video, this is the first of 3 videos on job offers. We're really going to talk about the evaluation process. The second video, we'll get into a little bit more about salary negotiations and cost of living considerations that you need to think about when evaluating the offer. And then finally, we'll get into accepting, turning down offers, and then also resigning in the end. So, you leave the final interview, and now what? Well, it's decision time. Let's kind of cover the other situations first. Let's start with the bad news scenario. What if they say no? Well, we need to know which kind of no it is. So the first one we'll talk about is no, which actually means in this particular case, not yet. And in this case, we want you to follow these steps. Why? Well, maybe the candidate they offer says no or doesn't show up, and they need to move to their second or third candidate. And you may be a bridesmaid, but in this case, if the person turns down the role or doesn't show up, what are they going to do? They're going to go to their second best candidate, and that could be you. So never burn a bridge. And the reason for that is, even if that person does show up, maybe a new position opens up, maybe another position in that same department opens. There's lots of things that can happen that can create new opportunities for you. And if you leave things in a very positive light, you send a gracious thank you, you repeat your interest or reinforce your interest, you bring back up your qualifications, and you promise to follow up. And then you actually do follow up. Creating that goodwill, creating that positive energy can actually boomerang back to you in a very positive way. And that's what we really want to make sure that you do. In the other scenario where it is a hard no, basically in this particular case, you still are not going to burn any bridges, but you're really not going to spend much effort here. It's a gracious thank you. You're going to take away from it what you possibly can. Basically, you're going to squeeze the fruit until it's dry, learn from it, and then move on. Well, what happens if that offer comes to you? Well, first of all, you should take the opportunity like these guys and just, react, let your emotions take over, and celebrate. But then we're going to start the real process of evaluating your offer against your expectations and priorities. And let's talk about that process now. Most people review job offers and, quite frankly, they let that emotion take over and it never goes away. This can result in basically a cursory review instead of a deep dive evaluating what's really important to you and what really that job offer means to you. What people miss quite often are the subtleties of the job offer and other related issues. So what happens is, kind of what people see when they look at a job offer, because quite honestly, job offers generally only offer a couple of pieces of information and maybe not all 6 of these on this particular list. You'll get title and responsibilities in the offer, you'll get a salary, you'll get benefits. You may or may not hear more about the work hours, your commute, location, and career advancement opportunities, particularly that last one. The other 2 generally will be in there. The other thing we'll talk about is work modality, which means either remote, hybrid, or office-based. So all of these things are interesting elements that you need to make sure that you have very clear direction on all of these things when you evaluate your offer or start to evaluate the offer. But the biggest issues you need to focus on are things that you may not think of at the very beginning. Culture, I kind of put that close to the surface because culture tends to be one of those things that we kind of investigate, but we really don't give a tremendous amount of thought to or dig deeply in to make sure that we understand what the culture's like in an organization. So it definitely should be one of those things that you focus on. And if you've not done all of the due diligence, this is the time to get it done. But hopefully you've taken care of answering a lot of these questions in advance before you actually get the offer. Other things that'll be important, growth opportunities outside of career advancement, meaning professional development, things of that sort. Is it a professional challenge for you? What are your manager and coworkers going to be like? What's the cost of living issues? That'll come up a little bit more when we start talking about salary negotiation as well. Are the products and the markets they're in, or is it a growth market or is it a contracting market? Where does this company sit in the grand scheme of all the competitors in that particular market? How profitable is the organization? How stable is the organization? Have they laid off people in the recent months or in the last year? How much travel is required for the job, and are you okay with that? And then finally, the reputation of the company. Some companies have great reputations for being great community stewards, very involved, very focused on things such that you may be interested in, such as the environment. Other companies may not have that same type of reputation and could be impacted by scandal and other things that may have happened in their recent history. But the things you really need to think about when you get here is your family. And believe it or not, I have family down underneath the water because you wouldn't believe how often I run into situations with my own candidates that I'm bringing to my clients, and they'll basically pull out at the end of the process saying, well, you know what, I really didn't discuss it with my family, and my wife or my husband doesn't really want to move. We didn't really think that the kids were going to be unhappy, and they really don't want to move. They don't want to leave the schools they're in and their friends. Believe it or not, many of my candidates don't actually have this conversation ahead of time, and they actually discuss it after the offer is there. And that's a horrible situation for the company and the individual, but certainly also for the poor, pitiful recruiter like me. And I'm just kidding. So ultimately, and also the other thing that people will forget or not think about is, you know what, they have a gut feeling about the offer and whether or not they should take it. And then they go against that gut feeling because they listen to the facts instead of a big picture view of everything that influences them. That's usually a mistake, by the way. Gut feeling, usually there's something behind that. And when you go into a job, accepting it and then having reservations, it will start to crack and you'll start to fray on the edges and things will go badly in many instances if that's the case. So when you get one or maybe even multiple offers, the process to evaluate them is the same. Now, we will talk about multiple offers separately, but first thing you really need to do when you're evaluating the offer is make sure you develop a clear idea of the factors and things that you cannot live without. So we talked about prioritizing things before. We talked about this in the scope of the marketing plan, and hopefully you've worked on creating something like that. The other thing is you need to know what you can be flexible on and by how much, and then you're going to stick to the plan. So whatever parameters you set up, whatever boundaries you set up, you need to make sure you're going to live by those boundaries and not just blow past them when the decision time comes. Ultimately, you're going to create a list of options beyond the original offer letter. And finally, if you haven't already, and by God you should have, talk to your family before you make a decision. Once you start thinking about the information, now you're going to want to start to think about using this information analytically. Always the gut feeling is going to be behind everything that you do, but let's do the data analysis first. Transfer the information that's important to you, and we'll talk about how to think through different issues in a moment. Prioritize the categories, and we'll talk about those. Evaluate each of those factors from the role, the offer, what you've heard through the interview process, what you've heard through informational interviewing and your networking activities, and then critically analyze all of these things together to hopefully guide you to a very clear decision. But remember though, you are the driver and you must do what's best for you. Don't make this decision on what's best for others. Who those important to you should have an influence, but they should never be the decision-making factor during job search and going through a job offer evaluation. So, what things could be important to you? So I put these in these 5 categories because broadly speaking, these will be the things that you want to focus on. So it'll be the role, location, the company itself, and its compensation structure, which includes quite a few different elements, as do the rest of these. And then the final one, which is the intangible, that's going to be your family input and the gut feeling that you get out of this. So let's go kind of step by step through this. So this is an excerpt from a resource in the module Resources that will help you evaluate the job offer. This comes from an Excel sheet. Each of these screenshots in the next couple of slides are going to show you different worksheets within, or different tabs within the major worksheet here for evaluating job offers. So these are the kinds of things when we talk about in the company category. The industry they're in, the size of the company, the trajectory of the volume and where they're going, whether they're public, private, profit or nonprofit, if they're a local, regional, or national or international. The product and service, is it something that you can be happy about in terms of doing that and dealing with what the products are and who the customers are? And then, of course, everything else that's on this list as well. And, not everything on this list is going to be important to you, but those things that are, write down what's important about each of those items that are important to you, and then you can leave the ones that aren't important to you blank. Or maybe you categorize them in a Pareto where you have them Paretoed A, B, C, right? A is the most important, B is the least important, and C are not important at all. The next area is to think about the role and the responsibilities there. So here it's going to be thinking about what the duties and responsibilities are. Do they align with what you really want to do? Do you see the growth opportunities from this as well? What's your power and influence in the structure? I love this question because you need to find out who your stakeholders are and what decision-making power you have in the organization. What's the interdependence? What that means is, do we have matrix reporting? Do you report to one person, or do you report to one person locally and another person functionally? That matrix type relationship can work. Quite often it works very effectively, but also can put you in the middle of basically a tug of war. So you need to ask and understand what that structure is going to look like. What's the risk here? Are you required to sign an NDA or confidentiality agreement? So again, I'm not going to go through everything, but this is an area where you need to focus on what's important to you about the role and the related issues to this. The third category is probably the most straightforward one, although you can take a look at the list now and you think, well, maybe it's not so straightforward. And that's because it just sort of depends on the level you are in the organization. Compensation basically, of course, starts with the very simple elements of your base salary, any signing bonus that you get, any performance bonus or annual performance-related bonuses. And then the third is likely going to be the benefits that you're offered and what's included in those benefits and what is the cost of those benefits. There are a multitude of other things that the company will offer you. Some of these may be free as part of the benefits package. Others may cost you something, usually a little bit out of the discount. But these are the things you need to think about how this impacts your pocketbook, essentially, or your wallet. A lot of these, this is a comprehensive list, and a lot of these are more executive level things, such as airline VIP clubs, whether or not you get a company car, that kind of stuff. Obviously that's not typical for an entry-level position, but these are things that you might be able to ask for during your negotiations. You might ask for tuition assistance. You might ask for a company-paid cell phone. And you may have a desktop and you may ask for a company laptop, things like that. In addition to that, if you're hybrid or remote, you can ask for home office expenses. So there are lots of things in here that can impact the amount of money that goes into your wallet or comes out of your wallet, as the case may be. So make sure you cover these issues. Location is the next one. There doesn't seem to be a lot here, but there is a ton packed within each of these individual line items. How much is the company going to offer you if you have to relocate? Are you going to have to pay for that relocation or part of it? Are they going to provide you with temporary living costs? Are they going to make an adjustment on your salary based on the cost of living differences between where you are and where you want to go or where you have to go? What are the benefits or pros and cons, if you will, of the location and what's important? Okay, so all of these things, you could relate them, of course, to your compensation very, very tightly. But these are things that you're going to want to think about what about the location is attractive to you or what about the location is unattractive. This could really come down to what your hobbies are as well. If you want to be at the beach, but your job is in the Midwest in Iowa, and you're going to be hours and hours and hours away from the nearest beach, maybe there's a lake nearby that you could find that might replace what you're looking to do. But think about what you like to do, and does that location support what you like to do? In addition to that, you need to be thinking about the cost of travel to visit family and friends. If you really are tight in your family, you may need to see your family on a regular basis, so you need to factor in the cost of travel if you do not live nearby. And of course, the final one is the intangible category, which is the thing we spoke about before. In terms of the family input, making sure that your family or your partner is involved in the decision-making process. And then finally, a gut feeling. And I can't define that for you. That is going to be absolutely unique to you, but you need to listen to yourself and listen to those creeping thoughts and that feeling in your stomach and your gut. And is it a positive feeling of excitement or is it a feeling of fear and hesitation? And you need to listen to that feeling. So in the end, here are some things to think about that might actually help define what that feeling is. First of all, of course, have you discussed this with your family or your partner? And then the rest of these questions, like I said, start asking them of yourself, and it may give you an idea of where that nagging feeling may be coming from and help you define that out and whether or not that's something that you really need to take into consideration. So that's it for this first video in the 3-part series on job offers. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking to you on the next one.